Hey everyone, welcome back to the Chain Reaction Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Shaughnessy, a co-founder at Delphi Digital, an independent research boutique providing institutional-grade analysis on the digital asset market. One quick housekeeping item, this podcast is strictly informational and educational and is not investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell any tokens or securities or to make any financial decisions. For full disclosures, please see the show notes below. Also, our listeners can visit Delphi Digital and use coupon code ChainReaction, all caps, as a special offer to access our research. The top crypto funds, analysts, and firms read Delphi Digital's research and analysis. With that out of the way, today I'm thrilled to have on Tor Bair, who's head of growth at Enigma. For those new to Enigma, it is described as a decentralized secure computation protocol, where secret nodes in the network perform computations over encrypted data. Enigma brings privacy to any type of computation, not just transactions. Our conversation covers the desire for privacy despite consumers being okay giving away their data for free, if the incumbents such as Facebook and Google can be displaced, and the entire mission of Enigma, an overview of how the protocol works and what Enigma offers. With that, let's jump into the episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm thrilled to have on Tor Bair, head of growth at Enigma. Tor, I hope I didn't botch your last name there.
No, you nailed it. How you doing?
Good. It's great to have you on finally. I know we've been internet friends for a while and we're in a lot of the same Telegram chats.
Yeah, that's most of my friends these days is internet friends, but they're very good internet friends, and I try to connect with them as often as I can.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, I guess we should jump right in and start with yourself. So how did you get started in crypto?
Well, the way that I got involved in crypto and the blockchain space is not really the same reason that I'm still involved now. It's definitely been an evolution from where I started. So I think I first heard about Bitcoin in, I'm going to say 2011. And I was working at the time as a derivatives trader in Chicago. And the reason Bitcoin was interesting is because nothing else was. You know, we were trading options and nothing was moving. It was extremely boring. And then someday somebody came in and they were just like, you should check out this Bitcoin thing. It moves like 50% a day. And so my first exposure to the space was as like, this is a volatile asset, not as like, this is a technology, this is Web 3.0. It was as that. And that kept my interest for a little bit, but that's all it ever was. And I think it stayed that way. I never invested in it. I never held any Bitcoin. And then I went back to grad school. So here I am. I'm at MIT. It's 2014. MIT's just started teaching some of the first like graduate level blockchain courses in the country. So I'm taking these courses, very interested now in the underlying technology. I think a big part of my focus was actually blockchain for digital rights management. Because I have somewhat of a music background. I was like, can we change the music industry with this? Spoiler alert, nothing is ever going to change the music industry. It's so broken. But blockchain was still interesting. And then I took a class that was taught partially by a researcher at the Media Lab named Guy Ziskind. And he is the CEO of Enigma. He wrote the Enigma white paper. He wrote this great paper, Decentralizing Privacy. He's got, hundreds of academic citations. At the time, I just thought he was a good lecturer. But it really opened my eyes to all the possibilities that exist for decentralized technologies, for blockchain, not as like a speculative asset class, but just as like a foundation for a new internet. And that's a big piece of the reason that I'm involved now, is seeing the potential of the technologies to, rewrite so much of what we take for granted about the world today, like how overly centralized it is, the way that single institutions or, governments or corporations can control so much of society. This seemed like a better path forward, and it felt like we were on the bleeding edge even then. So come a long way, I guess, from when I first found out about it, but I like it a lot more now.
That's awesome. I wish that Rutgers Business School, where I went, offered me the opportunity to get involved in crypto, but it didn't. But that's a really creative and it sounds like a somewhat fun journey. In hindsight, I'm sure it was a little crazy when you were going all around and back and forth on this stuff. But
stories always sound better in hindsight, but it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
It's never dull. I'll say that.
No, of course not. And you're, the 50% moves, you're reminding me of 2017. I'm like having, I want to go back then for a little while.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, of course. So, Tor, let's dive into at a high level because Enigma's focused on privacy and scalability. Let's start at a high level about privacy. I mean, why is it important to consumers? Because it just appears like no one cares. Like everyone gives away their privacy on Facebook. The credit bureaus get hacked and nobody cares. Everyone's social security numbers out there on the dark web. I guess why is privacy important to you? And do you think that cultural shift to actually caring will happen?
Yeah, it's tough because I agree. To a large extent, the average consumer hasn't shown that they care about privacy, at least in terms of altering their behaviors. But it's a tough question to get at because we have to start by defining privacy. And getting at that definition is really hard because everybody wants to define it as something different. The governments want it to be defined as something criminals want to have, right? They've got something to hide. And corporations usually want it to be defined as anything that they don't want you to know, and so on. So usually people just think it means you have or something that you don't want to share with others. And that could be for any reason. And there are very good reasons to not have every piece of information about ourselves and our lives public to anyone at all times, right? Like that can be a safety concern. That can be a human rights concern. Really, you could just want space in the world that's really yours. What privacy gives you is that space to become and exist as an individual, and privacy rights are what protect that. That's at least my view on what privacy is. That is why it is so important. I associate privacy with this right to be an individual. And again, like there's very good reasons not to share everything about ourselves with everyone else all the time. And there's going to be certain parties in society who say, well, we're not asking you to share it with everybody, just us, right? Just trust us. And a big piece of the decentralization movement is about trying to have these trust minimized systems. You're not supposed to have to trust these central authorities, the same people that we've been trusting with our privacy. Well, that could be Equifax, right? We've had to trust Equifax with so much, and there hasn't been choice. So another big piece about privacy for me is creating choice. When you start to put it in terms for people where it's like, we're allowing you to be an individual, or we're allowing you to have choice, it starts to sound a lot better than if you just say, we're allowing you to hide something from somebody else. But really, that's what privacy is about. And privacy technologies are ways that we can fight the trends in our society towards everything becoming public, toward this trend of what we're calling now surveillance capitalism, right? Privacy technologies are the counter trend against that. And if we're not investing in them, we're essentially saying, we're okay with the world moving in this direction. We're okay with everything running through Facebook. We're okay with the Chinese authorities monitoring every channel and censoring all information. Like if that is not an okay version of the future for you, you should care about privacy, even if it's not impacting your day-to-day life in a tangible way for you just yet.
That's a great way to look at it, especially like a multifaceted breakdown of what privacy means. That's super interesting, Tor. And, I guess just focusing on, where hopefully our listener base has interest here is, Facebook's obviously huge. Mark Zuckerberg, I think 3 weeks ago, released his paper on privacy, but it always seems to me like we're getting to a point where like a giant, say, incumbent like Facebook, we don't really think about them as an incumbent because they're a tech company, but they're getting old at this point, is going to shift over to privacy and disrupt their entire business model. It seems like somewhat impossible. Do you think that we'll ever have real privacy on existing applications that we use today?
Well, I have to say, I recently published a blog post on the Enigma blog, and the title of the blog post, it kind of gives away the answer because I titled it Consumer Privacy and Centralization Can't Coexist. And I still think that's true. It's a week later and I still believe it. Generally speaking, if a company like Facebook is calling for more regulation or they're building some sort of new technological solution and they claim it's for the protection of users, and then you look back at a decade-long history of abusing the data of those same users, or at least, not engaging in appropriate practices to protect it, we have right to be skeptical of their intentions. And in this case, their intention is pretty clear. It's not for our protection, it's theirs. The biggest threat to Facebook right now is some sort of antitrust proceeding, that we break them up, that this massively centralized company with billions, multiple billions, it's not just a single billion, it's almost 3 billion users across, all their platforms across the globe. That's like almost getting to half of the humans alive. If that's not an incumbent, I don't know what is. The only thing that threatens that is other centralized institutions attacking that power. So that's governments and that's regulation. And they're not really threatened by anything else. So if they can at least just protect themselves from getting broken up, from Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook becoming these fragmented businesses, if they can just stave that off, and they're out in full force against it, Zuck and Sandberg and everybody else, if they can just stave that off, they will be fine. And they hope this whole thing blows over like every other privacy crisis. But if it ends in an antitrust proceeding, that's an existential threat. So they're willing to say whatever it takes, or to even call for regulation if it means they get to stay a company. But I don't think they're doing it for our protection. It's pretty clear that it's mostly for theirs.
Yeah, I agree there. It's definitely their own lifeline. I think Zuckerberg was at Congress and they asked him to propose changes or his own regulations. And, of course, he's up in arms ready to do that. Why not? But,
yeah.
Just one more question here, Tor. It seems to me like most people get, consumer applications for free because they give up their privacy. And it seems one of the ways in which people could have their privacy back on applications are if they pay for these services instead, because they won't be able to make ad revenue or sell your information or data. Do you think that that's like the only trade-off that we can do here? Like we can have a private Facebook, but we're going to have to pay for it? Or do you think that there might be more altruistic ways forward here?
For something like Facebook in particular, where there's, network effects are such a big deal, like for any kind of social platform, Facebook's built a moat because not only are you on it, all your friends are on it. So to have a competing platform, you need to get a whole bunch of people on it all at once. And if all those people have to now start paying for that platform, I don't really see how you get to like that tipping point. I don't think how you can get to like meaningful scale where you and your best friend and all of their friends are all on the same platform if it isn't owned by Facebook. That's kind of the issue here. They built this massive moat the only way that you can build a moat, which is moving fast and breaking things and exploiting data where you can, tracking users around the web. Like that's how you build this unassailable social media company. And now that they've got this unassailable moat of usage that no one can compete with, they don't mind having to give up how they got it, right? Like they have this empire. They don't have to worry about how they got there anymore. They just need to protect it. So I don't really think that like if you started a competing Facebook and you just let everybody pay for it, that it would work, and I don't necessarily think that like starting a competing Google and you had to pay for it would work. Like, why would that work? Google has so much more information. The information that all of these companies have gained, the data that they've gained, that is their moat. And unless they give up that data entirely, then, that moat doesn't go away. And then asking users to pay for an inferior product, I just don't see how that scales. And I don't see Facebook or Google asking users to pay for a product that they've already been getting, for free. And maybe they have some sort of like upcharged offering where you don't get shown ads anymore. And maybe people would pay for it. But again, that doesn't solve the problem to me. The problem is not just that, our data has been exploited. The issue for me, again, is these are monopoly powers in society. And the threats to our society are coming from this over-centralization of power. And it's the power they don't want to give up. And as long as they have it, you can fix one abuse of users, but another is just going to pop up like whack-a-mole. If we don't have some sort of way to decentralize that power, you're not getting at the heart of the problem. You're just whacking away at the symptoms.
No, that makes sense, Tor. But just one question there. I mean, if we assume that, say, a real private version of Facebook that we may have to pay for will never attract users, and say Facebook and Google have too big of a moat, doesn't that imply that we'll never have real private viral consumer applications?
Not necessarily. If you think in the current paradigm, what I'm saying is if you're trying to become another Facebook, you're in trouble. If you're trying to be another centralized platform that's going to compete on privacy somehow, like a privacy first centralized platform, and you just promise users you're going to protect their data a little bit better, I don't really see how that's necessarily going to work. But the promise of a decentralized Facebook is that it's not going to be this new, like, privacy first, like, centralized Facebook platform necessarily. There's going to be decentralized elements to it. And we're starting to see, I think you've had, the Cent co-founders on here previously, and I've had them on my own podcast, but you're starting to see these kinds of new social networks that have these decentralized elements or more peer-to-peer elements where people are interacting with each other directly, tipping each other directly. Like, these are all still mechanics that are so, like, early in their exploration. Something like that makes a lot more sense to me. Like, we're finding new ways to connect people and let them interact, and decentralized systems have some part of that. That I can believe in. It's so hard for me to think of anybody turning privacy into a competitive advantage in the centralized tech world. I think all the promise of privacy and really creating value for individuals, and again, protecting the rights of individuals, is going to come from the decentralized web, is going to come from this Web3 movement. That's where my whole attention is now.
Tor, you should be the spokesperson for Web3, because that was the best comparison I've heard, in that privacy as a feature for centralized companies is not a competitive advantage. I think that's a great call.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I consider myself a bit of a spokesperson for Web3. I hate to speak it on behalf of one project in it. There's a whole ton of people in this space working on the same stuff. We're just one piece of the equation.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, I mean, we could talk about Facebook and privacy for the whole podcast, and we'll forget about Enigma. So let's dive into Enigma. What is the 30,000-foot view, or the elevator pitch that you tell people when you bump into them?
So the 30,000-foot view of Enigma, it sort of depends if you're interested in, like, the technical details or the purpose of Enigma, the vision of Enigma. I try to keep to explanations that kind of serve for both. What Enigma actually is a secure computation protocol. It's a protocol that allows a decentralized network of nodes to perform computations on encrypted data and then return the result of that computation, which means the nodes themselves in the network do not see the raw data at any time. That's not exposed even to the nodes themselves. They're not exposed outside the network. The idea of secure computation is that each participant who's contributing data to the computation never knows more than, like, their own input to the computation. That's what keeps it secure. There's not, like, one party that needs to know everything. So this is in contrast to something like zero knowledge proofs, where you know something, you want to prove that you know something to everybody else, but you don't want to reveal what it is. Well, still, there's one central party that knows everything, and that's you. So you know everything, and you need to prove it. With what we're trying to build, in terms of a generalizable secure computation protocol, is a protocol where there doesn't have to be any kind of trusted third party, even yourself, that knows all of the data. That's the real revolution. It's going beyond some of these other privacy solutions in this space. So now you can see the relevancy of that to the Web3 stack, the decentralized web stack. If you're already familiar with the space, you can kind of see how that fits in. Because with a blockchain, if you're trying to use data with blockchains, generally speaking, you're in trouble. You try to put that data on the blockchain and compute somehow, like using the blockchain. That's super slow. It's super expensive. And now all the data is public. Blockchains are not, they're not a computation solution. They were supposed to be used for, auditing, verification. Like, they're amazing at that, but they're super terrible at privacy. But if you combine a secure computation protocol, like what I've just described, with a blockchain, and you're handling these computations on our, computation network, and then the result gets committed back to a blockchain, that's where the verification layer comes in. This now is starting to look more like a complete stack for decentralized applications. If you're using a blockchain and then you're plugging it into, like, Amazon Web Services, you don't have a decentralized application. And I really don't necessarily see what we gain as users or as a society by having like a blockchain combined with all these like centralized other pieces of the stack, whether it's like databases or compute or whatever. Like this is where the potential really is decentralizing the whole Web3 stack. So Enigma is that part of the stack that's primarily concerned with secure computation. That's the value that we're trying to provide to the space. And it also has big implications, even if you're not using blockchain, for things like secure data sharing, which is a huge deal for enterprises, governments, anybody who's dealing with sensitive data at any stage, and at this point in the world, where everything is kind of becoming a tech company, everybody touches data. Everybody needs to use data, but doesn't want to be liable for misusing that data. Having some way to securely compute and share that data is massively important. If you're in the centralized world, if you're in the decentralized world, just that problem is what we've been trying to solve now for years.
That's interesting, Tor. So going back to your point that you just discussed on using a blockchain, but doing off-chain computation such as on AWS, your point is that if you were to do that, the data at the computation level would be exposed to AWS, making it not only not private, but say subject to hacks or onlookers. Is that a good way to sum that up?
Pretty much. I mean, the idea of the decentralized web, and again, like this is a personal perspective and maybe others disagree, but for me, the idea of the decentralized web was to solve the problems of the centralized web. And the biggest one for me, the crisis that we're facing, is primarily a privacy crisis. And the fact that we've created these data silos, which are becoming honeypots for hackers, attackers. We see it with Equifax, Marriott, Uber. There's so many dozens of names, I won't bother. But that's the problem. And if you have some sort of like decentralized portion of your DApp, but you're still, relying on some sort of centralized database, that's going to end up being a problem. Like we haven't solved the key problem here. We've created something new, maybe kind of interesting, but to me, like there's a reason we don't have hundreds of thousands or millions of users of decentralized applications. It's like they're not really solving anything new yet. And maybe it's because we haven't really been able to truly decentralize them. We're very early in that journey. And Enigma's trying to be a part of that early stage of that journey with an eye, 5-10 years in the future, when we've been able to build those kind of meaningfully adopted, meaningfully powerful applications that are really something different.
That's awesome. So, Tor, I always thought that, and this was like a loosely held opinion early on, that computation could happen on AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, and then just be stored on Ethereum, on Bitcoin, take your pick. But I guess that's naive, because you would still be, obviously, as we just discussed, exposing all that data to the centralized cloud providers. I guess the question here is, like, what type of data do you think could happen off-chain on AWS versus what type of data do you think could be computed on Enigma? Like, is this, like, I don't think anybody really cares if their gaming data is computed on AWS, but if my social security card is being, or numbers being used, I would want that to be, say, on Enigma per se. Is there like a trade-off on use cases here, or are you guys targeting basically all computation for decentralized applications?
I think there's always trade-offs when you're describing any kind of technical architecture, and some of it is usually between security and performance. If you're, looking for something super, super high performance, that's usually why people turn to centralized systems, where everything can talk to each other. And yes, you're usually also creating single points of failure, which is a security concern. But, some people are less concerned with that if they're mostly concerned about some other aspect of performance. Where I see Enigma playing a big role early on are areas where it's not so critical how something performs. Like, obviously, there's still like a baseline above which you have to do better on performance. But usually, like, you're less concerned about speed, but you really don't want a central entity to have all of that data. This is like when you're trying to design some kind of new platform or system, where it would be very bad if all of the data was held in like a single place and you created a single point of failure. Like Enigma has a huge role to play in those kind of systems. Where we are with the space today, I don't think we're ready to like start storing social security numbers on decentralized systems either. I think that the space is currently suffering from all kinds of security concerns. And that's because so many people have had to rely on, the old world of technology where obviously we still have security concerns. Decentralized technologies have their own security concerns. So now we've combined the new technology security concerns with the old technology security concerns. That's what I mean about decentralized applications that have like AWS or whatever else as part of their stack. Like all you've done is combine the biggest problems of the centralized and decentralized world, smacked it into one. You have this massive attack surface. That's not where we want to end up, right? So in the short term, I want people to just proceed with caution. Like we have to explore these use cases. We have to test them small to start and scale them out. What we don't want to do is build huge amounts of infrastructure on something that we already know isn't going to be a solution in the long term. If we're putting all these resources into things that are kind of like these hybrid decentralized applications that don't actually solve new problems, then I am concerned that we're building the decentralized web on sand, right? When we need a solid foundation. So Enigma's whole vision, the whole point of us existing is to have that foundation be super solid, because we think without us, without a secure computation solution, without all these other kinds of critical foundational pillars, we're going to get ourselves in way more trouble than we can handle just thinking that we have it all figured out too soon. So I guess I could sum that all up by saying I don't really like a lot of the centralized or quasi-centralized solutions that are being used now in the decentralization space. But before we try to use some of the really experimental stuff, we have to make sure we're building that right too. So we're being super cautious.
No, that's fair. So going into Enigma and for how developers use the platform, I know you guys just launched your testnet, or didn't just launch it, but we're going to go into that a bit later. But how do you view Enigma for the new person being used? Like, is this something that developers just plug into? Is this something that they have to go on a site or contact you? Like, I guess how easy is it to, say, embed or use Enigma as part of a decentralized application?
The way that we're treating Enigma right now in this current iteration of the protocol, which is what we're calling Discovery. Discovery is our very first networked secure computation protocol, so multiple nodes. That we're treating as a second layer essentially for Ethereum. So if you're an Ethereum developer, we are concerned primarily with two things. One is usage, another is usability. Usage just means we want this to scale. We want to be able to support many different kinds of applications. We want this to support, all kinds of use cases across all kinds of industries. We want this to be a global protocol. Usability means it has to be easy for developers to use. They have to be able to integrate Enigma with their own solutions easily. Ethereum has the largest developer ecosystem in the decentralization space. There's other protocols, there's other chains. Nothing really comes close to the level of activity on Ethereum right now. And I think Ethereum, in terms of their value system, is definitely the closest to what we kind of hold internally at Enigma. We are trying to work with as many Ethereum developers as we can. We're also trying to bridge into like the Web 2 world, the legacy web world, whatever you want to call it, because there's tons of developers in the Web 2 world that are building privacy first solutions. We want them to understand the capacity that we will have in Web 3 to still build privacy first solutions. So we're bridging all those privacy focused developers from Web 2 into this new world. And we're trying to educate Ethereum developers and other developers who are already in the space about the importance of privacy in their solutions. And we equate privacy a lot of the time with security. There's a ton of applications in the Web3 space where it's not just like a privacy thing, like we want to protect your social security number from being leaked. It's more like if you can't keep some of this sensitive data private in your application, it's going to break. It won't do what you want. And a big example that's gotten a lot of attention from a lot of people is decentralized exchanges. Their privacy is a security concern, for example, with front running. And if you can't protect the privacy of like the orders that are coming in, now you have the potential for the application to be abused. by bots or any kind of malicious actors on the platform. That sort of security risk extends to almost any other kind of application you could want to build, any other kind of decentralized application anyway. It's the same thing if you want to do secure voting, but you don't want to expose the votes. You want to do secure auctions, but you don't want to reveal the bids. All of these things require this kind of secure computation solution. You definitely don't want to put that information directly on the blockchain. So that's all part of usability, right? We said usage, lots of different applications, usability. Like, we want Enigma to be the best possible solution if you are facing all of these extremely common problems. And while I would say that we're not where we want to be yet, we're still working on our documentation. We have a substantial portion of our team that is just dedicated to helping, handhold developers, get them onboarded. And our goal is, again, to be the most usable platform for developers who are trying to build privacy first, decentralized applications and smart contracts.
Great summary. So, Tor, a lot of people hear about Enigma, and I think that not a buzzword, but what they hear a lot is smart contracts and secret contracts. Can you walk us through the high-level difference, and I know you probably alluded to a lot of this already, of what the difference is between a secret contract versus a smart contract?
Yeah. A secret contract, the way that we came up with the term was just saying, like, what if you could have a smart contract, which itself is kind of a problematic term, even in Vitalik's own admission. He wants to call it, I think he said at one point, like a persistent script, right? Which is not super catchy either. But the difference between a secret contract and a smart contract is this idea that you can have private or sensitive inputs. A smart contract is smart. Yeah, it knows how to like execute itself, right? That's what's supposed to makes it smart and autonomous and unstoppable and whatever. A secret contract is also smart, but it's also smart enough to know that you shouldn't be revealing all of this information publicly. So a smart contract that can't use private or sensitive inputs, a lot of what I say is that it's kind of useless. It's not smart enough. In fact, it's probably too smart for its own good. Like, it's just going to get you in trouble. Secret contracts kind of are the future here. You want to be able to have these smart contracts with private and sensitive data as inputs, right? Like, how are you going to build a decentralized application for the healthcare industry or for the finance industry? All these industries, it's not just like this is sensitive data you wouldn't want to share. It's like there's legal concerns. Legally, you can't share this stuff. You can't have it unencrypted, exposed, whatever. Like, we have to be working with secret contracts in the future. We have to have that functionality, or we don't have useful decentralized applications. And again, it's what I said earlier. It's like, we don't want to end up with a mess. We want to end up with better solutions that are going to scale.
So, Tor, a lot of people hear also about Zcash, Monero, Grin, and Beam as privacy coins. I think, and don't kill me for saying this, I think some of their appeal is losing favor a little bit because some people just assume Bitcoin will just enable true privacy in the future, however it works. But you guys, I don't think about it as just transferring value. You guys are trying to make actual private computations work for like actual dApps at scale. Do you think that they might get more attention than you? It seems to me like your market could be bigger, but what's your take on the privacy coins versus Enigma?
You're sort of answering your own question, right? Like, so a transaction in our mind is one specific kind of computation. And transactions are really right now the killer use case for blockchains. That's the idea, is there's supposed to be a distributed ledger of transactions. Like on Bitcoin, the miners around the world becoming this decentralized network of essentially accountants updating the ledger. And that's what has proven out to be the killer use case so far. But we see decentralized technologies as something far more powerful. And where, Bitcoin and Zcash and Monero, like a lot of these technologies were reactions to the financial crisis, right? Like Bitcoin specifically, right? There was this centralized world of finance, and there were too big to fail banks, and the world almost imploded. So people Satoshi devised Bitcoin. And everything that's come since has kind of been a reaction to that, a decentralized financial system, solving the problems of the legacy financial world that were caused by over-centralization. Well, here we are again with Enigma, because we see ourselves as sort of a reaction to the privacy crisis, which again was created by an over-centralized tech sector where everybody was incentivized to centralize and control as much data as they could without thoughts of how to secure it, just like banks inflated their risk, and they had no idea how to value any of these broken mortgage pools or whatever else, right? And nobody cared until it imploded, and nobody cared about their privacy until it's imploding. So out of that kind of privacy crisis, this wreckage, is coming this new kind of technology. That's why we see Enigma sort of as a reaction to that privacy crisis. It goes beyond just transactional privacy. It goes beyond just a reaction to like, okay, the financial system is broken. Okay, like we no longer have any privacy to our transactions. It's everything. So what we're hoping is that we have a huge educational component to our project. We have a huge responsibility for education and advocacy in the space, but we're still a small team. So between us and our community and our partners, like we really try to work together to educate people. It's like, why should we care about privacy in the centralized world? Why should we care about privacy in the decentralized world? Why does it go beyond transactional privacy to include, computational privacy, something generalizable, and then sort of tie it all together for them and say, why is this so important? Why does this mean like that we can rewrite the foundation of the internet? And what would that do for us as individuals? People are coming around. Individuals are coming around. Not every individual, but the people who have like woken up about this and really care about it, they're in our community already. They're supporting Enigma. They're working directly with us. We just need, a few million more, and we're right there. It's probably not going to be linear, right? And we're in very early stages, but I have a lot of respect for Zcash, Monero, all these privacy-focused projects, because they've been at it a long time. They've been also doing this education, this advocacy work. We're just trying to build on that. We're trying to expand it. We're trying to grow that vision and make it even more relevant for even more people, and hopefully avoid some of the stigma that they've gained from being focused on privacy for transactions. We think that focusing on privacy for computations is actually something that won't have the same stigma, like, oh, this is used by criminals. No, this is going to be used by everyday people, because we're all being impacted by this privacy crisis every single day.
That's great. And Tor, switching over to different levels of the stack here, pretty sure you guys are building on Ethereum. I know you voiced your opinion why, the developer ecosystem, et cetera. I guess there's two questions here. The first one is, do you ever think Ethereum could implement privacy features at the protocol level that would make Enigma, which would kind of, make it so you don't need Enigma? I guess that's my first question. Then we can go on to the second one.
Yeah, people, especially people who aren't like on the technical side, do get concerned about that, because it's the same thing that you were saying with Zcash, Monero. Oh, won't they just like flip the privacy switch, right? But there's so many different kinds of privacy technologies. There's not just like there is a private solution, like the one great privacy solution, and they will do it. Every privacy technology has its trade-offs. We talked about performance and security. Like all of these different technologies are always going to have that trade-off. And I don't think that this is something that like a blockchain would do, right? Like we're talking about a decentralized web stack. If you're talking about like there's going to be one protocol that does absolutely everything, and somehow a blockchain can do everything when it's designed to be bad at privacy, like that's just not a vision that makes any sense to me. There's going to be a number of different kinds of like essentially side chains and other protocols that can work together with Ethereum. Or you can look at a competing blockchain and say, oh, people are going to build a solution for that blockchain. Enigma is built to be blockchain agnostic. Right now, we're a second layer solution for Ethereum, but in theory, our secure computation protocol can operate as a computational layer for any blockchain. It would just require, compatibility and development work. And eventually, on our roadmap, the plan is still that someday we will also have our own blockchain, our own consensus layer for verification. There's no telling at this stage of the game, what the future of the Web3 stack is going to look like. But what it's definitely not going to look like, at least in my opinion, is one protocol that's suddenly somehow integrated every best element of every other protocol and it's an all-in-one package or something. No, it's going to be a fragmented ecosystem of interoperable protocols, and we're going to be able to select the ones that operate best for the applications that require them. Just because there's so many different kinds of architectures that would be best for any kind of application. There's not going to be a one-size-fit-all solution. We're not trying to be one. I don't think anybody else is trying to be one. If somebody claims they're trying to be one, it's probably because they don't know what they're doing. But we are trying to be the most usable, and we are trying to have the most usage, and we are trying to be the most generalizable while still maintaining a very high level of performance, because we think that's what the space needs. And I feel really, really good about that strategy. I think it's going to benefit the most people.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree about trade-offs, and I'm a stickler for trying to point out competition where I can. I mean, do you think that you guys would ever, are you guys in a rush to build a second layer, say on Tezos, or I don't even know if you can, but for Polkadot, like, are these things on the roadmap, or is it kind of too soon to say, we want to build on everybody else first?
I wouldn't say it's on the roadmap. On the other hand, we've talked with both of them. We've talked with Tezos, we've talked with Polkadot, we've talked with pretty much anybody who's building anything in the space, but it's at every layer of the stack, right? These are just chains, but we've also talked with people who are, building distributed databases. We've talked to people like people building oracles, right? Everybody has a part to play in the stack. And we have, as one of our core values, this idea of collaboration and cooperation and interoperability. We want to support as many technologies as we can. But as I said, it's just a question of like developer time and compatibility. If the opportunity made sense and we knew that people were going to build applications on top of this integration, we would definitely pursue it. But right now, like we said about Ethereum has an extremely healthy and thriving developer ecosystem. And the serious devs are all there. And that's where we want to be. We want to solve real problems for developers who are currently building these decentralized applications that are hopefully going to be the future of the internet. If there ends up being a developer ecosystem that can rival Ethereum's, I'm interested. And we're just really not there. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It just gives me hope for the future, because it means, maybe we will be. Maybe we will get all of these thriving, competing ecosystems. I would rather see thriving, compatible ecosystems. Hopefully we get there too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Tor. I mean, I follow the developers everywhere, and that's why I'm a fan of Ethereum. But that's also why I think it's Ethereum's race to lose, and that's why I'm always constantly trying to follow developers and see if they're moving to other chains or if they're thinking about other things, because the developers drive everything. Especially, you guys are a great example here.
Yep, we're no exception.
So, zooming out, going into some of the fun stuff, you guys recently open sourced your code, your testnet's live. What do you want to talk about in terms of recent events? I guess what's most appealing to you? What's the most impactful here?
Yeah, so we open sourced our code at the end of March. Any kind of private repository that we had for some of the code that we'd been cooking up, we open sourced. It was in a place where we felt like it was understandable. Everything, all the pieces were there. Everything fit together. It was something people could look at for themselves. And we're obviously very dedicated to being open source and transparent. And there's plenty of teams that are building transparently in open source, and there's also plenty of teams that aren't. And that's not what we want it to be. We definitely want it to be the former. In terms of the testnet, here's where things currently stand. We have already a testnet, which is more of a devnet. It's like you can deploy this locally. You can start building secret contracts on your own. So you can test secret contracts. You can see how it would work on our network. The network itself has to be deployed on Ethereum testnet. That's the network protocol itself. And that's going to be followed then by a mainnet deployment. So that's what Discovery is. Discovery is this networked protocol. And I don't consider it like fully live on testnet until we have like this Ethereum testnet deployment and people can start running those testnet nodes. So they're called secret nodes in our network. Secret nodes are the backbone of Enigma's network. These are the nodes that actually do the private computations on our network. And during that testnet period, we're going to allow people to spin up secret nodes. They are, for the first time, going to be able to run these computations on secret nodes, but it's still testnet. They're still not getting paid like mainnet ENG in exchange for computing. Once we deploy on mainnet, people who are running secret nodes in our network are going to receive like mainnet ENG tokens, like gas on Ethereum, but it's ENG on the Enigma network for running these secure computations. They stake ENG in the network. It's a proof of stake protocol, and they receive ENG as fees. So there's that big testnet milestone coming up, Ethereum testnet. But right after that is that big mainnet milestone, and that's where our 100% of our attention is focused as a team. How do we get to that mainnet launch so people are able to run nodes, receive ENG and fees, stake their ENG? Like, that's the level of adoption that we have to aspire to. Everything else is just kind of still keeping us in like mostly promises, right? That's what we consider actually shipping. So we've done a lot, but we haven't done quite enough yet for me to be able to say like I'm super happy with where we're at. And our whole team, our whole community feels that way. We know how much more we have to do.
No, that's excellent. You guys are focused on building, and that's what you guys should be focused on. So I guess I know you alluded to it, but are there any metrics you think you could share or that you have shared kind of on your testnet or how that's going? Or, have you shared qualitatively how that's going so far?
Qualitatively, for sure. I mean, so we're open source. You can see all the commits that are being made. You can see all the progress that's being made towards that testnet deployment on Ethereum. That's what we want to do right after testnet launch, and we've written about this kind of extensively now, is we're launching something that's called the Genesis game. And this is where during this testnet period, people will operate nodes. They can stake tokens and run secret nodes, but they're staking testnet tokens, and they're it's not mainnet ENG, it's testnet ENG. During this period, the best performing nodes, this is if you're familiar with like Cosmos's game of stakes, it's not totally unsimilar, but the best performing nodes during the testnet period get selected to become the Genesis nodes, the very first nodes in the mainnet release of Discovery. So our intention is over the next months, like there's tons of metrics we're going to be able to share, which is like how many nodes are actually actively competing on the network? How is their uptime? How are their computations going? Like how successful is the network? Has it gone down at all? There's going to be so much more like tangible metrics that we're able to communicate. And then when we move into mainnet and there's like real applications running, then you get to point to usage, which is like how are the fees going through the network? How are the block rewards getting paid out? All of that is like the kind of tangible usage that we want at the network level. And then there's, how many developers are building on top of the protocol. Right now, there's huge interest. Everybody is, I don't want to say everybody, that's kind of vain or whatever, but a lot of people are really interested in privacy solutions for Ethereum right now, because as we said, like most decentralized applications require privacy for some aspect of what's being built. But it's, we want that interest to turn into actual mainnet usage. So because we're not live on mainnet, it's not mainnet usage. We're only happy when we're able to say, look at all these applications that were actually built, actually deployed, actually integrating Enigma, and they're actually leading to network usage. Then we'll be able to like sit back and say, okay, this is working as designed. Up until then, all I can say is developer interest is very strong. We've had a lot of people express interest in our documentation and in discovery, both from like Web3 space, but also enterprise. We've had a lot of people express interest in running nodes. Like I think we had over 600 people fill out our node running interest form. And again, I said there's going to be maximum 50 nodes when we launch the network. So there's been interest for a long time, and we've been a project for a long time. Like we started in 2015, we did our ICO in 2017. Now it's 2019. Like there's been a ton of anticipation built. We just need to get it done. We just need to launch the network. We just want to show that people are using it, beyond just being able to say people are interested. We want to be able to say people are in it. And Enigma is powering dozens of applications across Web3.
So Tor, looking at on-chain effects, you guys are the 97th largest project. Looks like your market cap for 2050 showing 70 million. I guess just so people are aware, what is the token used for, the ENG token?
So the token in our network, as I kind of alluded to earlier, it's used similar to gas in Ethereum. So there's two primary functions. One is as fees in the network. So you pay ENG to get essentially to get your computations done. That's the fee that's paid to the secret node, the worker node in our network. And then the other function of the token is that you have to stake it to run a node. There's a minimum stake to run a secret node. I believe it's 25,000 ENG as a minimum stake for a secret node. And the more ENG that a node stakes, the higher its chance of selection to perform a computation. So as a node in the network, the more skin in the game that you have, essentially, the greater your chance of selection, the greater your chance of receiving those next fees. That's pretty typical for proof of stake networks, but it's actually interesting. We're going to be like one of these very first like proof of stake networks actually launching. Like Ethereum's not proof of stake yet. They're working on that transition, but we're trying to show that like staking networks are actually extremely powerful, especially for this computational use case in particular. And the token is the key to a lot of it, just like gas is critical to Ethereum.
That makes a lot of sense, Tor. So I guess basically you guys are looking forward to the token taking real meaning following your mainnet launch.
Yep, that's all we care about. I mean, it already has real meaning, but where we see things going in the future, obviously, is very different from where we see it today. And the one thing that I always try to remind people about this space is that it's not linear. You look at something today that doesn't have adoption, you can't just be looking at, it's going to have, X% more adoption the next day and the next day and the next day. Like with foundational protocols like this, one day the switch flips. One day we're live. We get people actually active. We get these applications being used. Everything changes. And this launch of Discovery for me, like, is the thing I've looked forward to. Like we did the ICO in 2017. We raised $45 million then, but it was still promises, right? It's 2 years later. We want to get it live. We want to get people using it. We want to show how powerful this technology is that we're building. Waiting, forever, you can't kind of show that off. And we really, really want to show how many solutions that Enigma can be a part of. We really want to provide value back to the space, which has already given so much value to us and so much inspiration to us so far. Like we're excited to be a bigger part of it going forward.
That's incredible. And Tor, one of my last questions for you, a lot of projects are, in the bear market, it seems like we've recovered somewhat. So, cross my fingers here, but do you think enough cash to last you to reach these goals, whether they take a year to 5 years, or is that always somewhat of an overlying concern?
It probably is for a lot of people. It's not for us. So like I said, I think we were one of the bigger ICOs in 2017. So we raised a substantial amount knowing how long our roadmap was going to be, knowing this was going to take us out like 5 or 10 years. And we weren't the people going and sponsoring Lambos and putting our names on all kinds of stuff. And like, we didn't set anything on fire is my point, right? Like we've always had very responsible treasury management because we have a responsibility, we think, to the future of the decentralized web. So right now, like, I can't put like a number of years on our runway, but let's just say I'm not concerned and it's at least a few. And we're still a small team, we're about a dozen people all over the world. But we definitely anticipate, spending more, doing more to support our ecosystem once we reach mainnet and once we're live. You could say that we've been kind of laying low for a little bit now, but I think that's why we've survived and thrived through a difficult bear market and kept building, and a lot of people didn't. But we're not the only ones. The reason I'm so bullish on the space is because I do know the other projects that have done a great job, and I do know that they take things seriously like we do, and they're the people we're going to be building right alongside for the next few years. And we're all really excited to build together. I can tell you that it's a lot more pleasant now than it was last year.
No, that's incredible, Tor. And the only thing that matters in a bear market or a long timeline is having that war chest of cash to get you there at the end of the day.
Yep, we feel good about that. We still need to launch and get people building. That's not necessarily correlated with money. Like you can't buy an ecosystem. It's really just going to come from what can we build, who can we teach.
No, you're totally right there. I mean, if you could buy an ecosystem, Block One would have won a year ago.
Yeah. Well, I don't like making predictions on that. It's like you never know what's going to happen over the next few years. We just want to be here when it does.
Totally. And Tor, switching to a friendly question, Gregory Rocco from the pizzeria asks why you hate pineapple pizza.
Oh man. Okay. It's not that I hate pineapple pizza. It's more that every other kind of pizza is superior. And if you take a look at the ecosystem of pizzas, and you just look at all the range of toppings you could have, whether you're a meat lover, so it's like sausage and pepperoni or grilled chicken, or if you're looking at vegetables, like, you got your spicy peppers, you got your roasted peppers, like you look at all that, it all makes sense. It all goes together. Pineapple is one of those things, going back to the Enigma ethos, it doesn't work with anything else at all. Once you put pineapple on a pizza, it kind of stands alone. I can't think of anything that pairs with pineapple. I don't think ham pairs with pineapple. I don't think anything goes with pineapple. You put pineapple on a pizza, you have centralized the topping ecosystem for that pizza, and I just can't stand by it.
Tor, I don't know if Rocco thought this one out, but he's going to love to hear it from you.
Well, I really don't like pineapple pizza. It's true. He got me.
Fair enough. Well, Tor, thanks so much for coming on. I hope to have you get on after the mainnet launch, and we could recap how everything's going.
Well, I hope some of these promises have turned into reality, and I look forward to discussing with you a little bit more, man. Best of luck with everything to you as well. We're excited to see where you guys are going with this podcast. I try to keep tabs because we have our own podcast. I'm always like, who's doing well? You guys are killing it.
Thank you so much, Tor. We'll talk soon.
Cheers, man.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please rate and review it to help other people find it. And visit delphidigital.io and use coupon code ChainReaction in all caps with no space to get an exclusive offer on accessing our research for our listeners.